This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Thursday, October the 23rd. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams, he's produced the program. We are looking forward to speaking with you this morning on a topic of your choosing. So, if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, our toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So just one more sleep before we get to game one of the World Series, where the Toronto Blue Jays, for the first time in 32 years, will be taking on the super steady Los Angeles Dodgers. All right, just a couple of interesting ones regarding the series. So for Donnie Baseball, bench coach Don Mattingly with the Toronto Blue Jays, he's been in Major League Baseball since 1982. He spent 14 years as a player, 12 as a manager, 17 as a coach. After 40 years in the majors, first time going to the World Series. And it's a fascinating look at it. The Yankees lost the World Series the year before Mattingly broke into the big leagues. They won the World Series the first year he retired, so he was sandwiched on either end, but back to or into the World Series for the first time for Mattingly. And people say, what do you talk about the Jays? No one cares. Well, apparently Canadians do care. So let's see here. The ALCS Game 7, the most watched Blue Jays game ever on Sportsnet. Average of 6 million viewers tuned in to watch the game. The game culminated with 11.8 million Canadians watch the ninth inning. So pretty amazing stuff. In comparison, the most watched Sportsnet broadcast in history was Game 7 of the 2024 Stanley Cup Final. Average 7.5 million viewers. Average minute viewers. Anyway, there you go. And today's the anniversary of Touch 'em All, Joe, the 1993 World Series, where Joe Carter hit a 3-run shot in the ninth inning. They were trailing 6-5 in Game 6. 3-run shot, of course, brings back-to-back World Series championships to Toronto. They became the 7th team in MLB history to win back-to-back championships. It's not the only time the series has been ended with a home run. Back in 1960, Bill Mazeroski for the Pittsburgh Pirates hit a solo shot in the bottom of the ninth. It was a tie game. Carter's home run was the first time that a home run was ever hit come from behind to win the World Series. So there you go. All right. I want to get a quick soccer note in here. Congratulations to Zoe Rowe, who plays for the Munn Seahawks soccer team. She has won the AUS Most Valuable Player, the 4th time a Seahawk has been named the AUS MVP, joining legends Laura Breen in 2008, Jessie Noseworthy in 2016, Holly O'Neill in 2021. She led the country in scoring, and she is the MVP of the AUS. All right, let's keep going. So as much as we need to be focusing on things in education, you know, all the same ones that I talk about, class size and composition and absenteeism and violence and supports and all the rest of it, what is this story about someone rear-ended a bus outside of St. John's School yesterday? I'm not sure what school it was, but the school buses are gigantic yellow buses and rear-ended, so either going too fast or distracted on school property or right in front of a school. So it's a bit of a strange story, but I guess that friendly reminder, be careful in those areas, s'il vous plaît. And I wonder what the punishment should be for this idiot. 28-year-old pulled over around Pasadena going 207 kilometers an hour. 207. That's race car kind of stuff. And it was at night. Pitch black. 207. So, of course, he got a bunch of tickets, charged with operating vehicle without reasonable consideration for others. But what should be the punishment for doing that? I mean, you have zero chance to avoid anything that might pop up in front of you at 207. Zero chance. It doesn't matter if you're Michael Schumacher and have finely tuned skills as a race car driver. So, anyway, that story's frustrating to read. All right, let's keep going. Here we go. It's almost ski season. I hate to wish our time away. The fall's been pretty nice so far. But the questions will still circulate about what the future Marble Mountain looks like. We know in the Premier's Economic Recovery Team report to divest of government interest and or subsidy at Marble Mountain. There's been no takers. They've gone to the market a few times and nothing's ever really happened. But a question being asked by a business owner in the area is a good one. A few years ago, there was a public meeting or a session at Marble where BCSE Group, they were tasked with developing a long-term plan for Marble and surrounding area. So the questions being asked, good ones. Where's the report? It'd be helpful to know what this independent group looked at so far as the long-term future for Marble. How much did the initiative cost taxpayers? Excellent question. What is the actual long-term plan for Marble Mountain moving forward? All very good questions. Now, we do know the last number of winters have been terrible for skiers and snowboarders at Marble. Conditions have been awful. Big rainstorms in the middle of ski and snowboard season, and the snow all rushed down the hill. But what is the plan? If you ask folks in and around Steadybrook, they see the need, economically speaking, and for recreational purposes, for Marble to continue into the future. But it's a good question, and we can see if we can't get any answers from the incoming government. Okay. So I see the story where Mr. Wakeham and the party has put their transition team in place. Okay, and the chief of staff will be his chief of staff while in opposition, Denise Turbot, fair enough. So Ross Wiseman, former cabinet minister, Darren King, former cabinet minister, Steve Outhouse, who's a real political operative. He's been a chief of staff for a variety of federal cabinet ministers. He ran the campaign. Colleen Janes, a long-time civil servant, also part of the transition. Okay, and that's good. But they go on to talk about, we'll have the cabinet named and assemble a senior team over the next few weeks. It kind of feels like over a few weeks is maybe a little bit too long for the transition. I know that it's complicated work to be done. I know you got to get organized. I know there's a lot of difference between being in the opposition benches versus in the seat of government, but that feels like a long time. Then they talk about improving healthcare, education, and the economy. Interestingly, on education, little to no discussion about education on the campaign trail. And in the leaders' debate, nothing. Just brief mention of school supplies. It kind of stands to reason that if we had a bit more of a keen focus politically and societally on the province's education system, we'd probably be in better shape than we are. On a variety of fronts. But we don't. It's not a sexy enough vote-getting issue, apparently, but that's the focus, so says Mr. Wakeham in the brief comments that we've heard from him so far. And then people will ask about, where's all the money coming from? Another great question. They'll talk about reallocating money that had been spent, they think, misspent by the Liberal government. So, number one, you talk about what is a pretty ridiculous, even though they call it thinking outside the box, sponsorship of a 4th Division soccer team in England. Yeah, that money can come back. Not huge money, but that makes sense. Then they make specific mention of travel nurses. Look, with the couple of $100 million plus we spent on travel nurses in the last number of years, it has obviously been problematic, whether it be for the working relationship on the floor, registered nurses working for the public sector, working shoulder to shoulder with travel agency nurses with flexibility of schedule, getting paid maybe as double what the RNs working for NL Health Services get. So, okay, but what's the actual strategy there? Then they talk about the Comfort Inn, the airport hotel. Horizons 106, I believe we call it now. Into the future, is that going to be something that the PC government will maintain? Some focus on transition housing, which is what they're calling the Comfort Inn. Whether or not it's been successful, I'm not really sure. Apparently some people have been transitioned into more stable housing and into the workforce and getting whatever support they need for their mental well-being and or for drug addiction or whatever addiction. So they'll talk about the reallocation there. Then it's the future of the Premier's office in Boston. It costs about $1 million a year. Seems to me there could be a measurable return on investment for keeping that office open if it does indeed bring forward any economic opportunities for the private sector companies. Then they talk about the future of the Premier's office in Central. If you ask the folks in Central, some of them think it's an excellent idea and should be maintained. And for others in various parts of the province, they think maybe not so much. Then they make specific mention of the Futures Fund. While we continue to borrow and continue to rack up debt and continue to have whopping big deficits, the Futures Fund is probably something we can pause for a little while. Conceptually speaking, sounds like a fantastic idea. But borrowing money to put in a future fund is kind of counterintuitive, I would suggest, but let's get into that if you're so inclined. What they're not talking about, or no real specific mention of it, is what the party's going to do, what Premier Designate Wakeham is going to do about the Upper Churchill. Look, if you look at what's going on in the province of Quebec, and I'm not suggesting we need to buckle to any perceived political pressures facing Premier Francois Legault in Quebec, but it's part of the conversation. So new polling, and you can take it for what it's worth, new polling says somewhere in the neighborhood of 74% of Quebecers want Legault to step down. Not just call an election right away, they want him gone. His party is in brutal shape. They have the potential to get shut out. On the other hand, the opposition party, being the Bloc, they say they're not interested in this deal. They might not be interested in any deal. So what does that timing look like and feel like insofar as your perspective goes? And, talk about cabinet to be formed in the coming weeks or what have you. Regardless of your position on Quebec or Hydro-Quebec or the Upper Churchill or Gull Island or anything involved, time is important here. So where are we with this review and who's going to do it? Where are we with the referendum and whether that's even going to happen or whatever into the future? But some pretty big questions there. I would add to it, what's being considered regarding Michael Wilson's resignation letter? It was heavily redacted when we got a peek at it. Mr. Wilson, of course, was generous enough to offer a lot of time on this program. He has sent me copious amounts of information and his analysis of the MOU. But it would be nice. Now, I know, without question, there's going to be some commercial sensitivities in his letter. And it's more of a legal question than it is a political question. But will we see any more of what Michael Wilson wrote insofar as why he resigned? We've seen and heard from Mr. Wilson about some of the general references and some very specific. But there's got to be more to it in that letter. Will we get a look at it? I don't know. Once again, probably a legal question versus political question. And then, I don't know how to couch this, but what does the future look like for Jennifer Williams, the CEO at Hydro and the president of Hydro? And she's been on the show a couple of times and generous with her time. But if we stand back and look at it in broad terms, and this is not a critique or an applause of one person or another, one party or another, but she's obviously steadfast in favor of this MOU and the continued negotiations toward definitive agreements. Obviously, Mr. Wakeham doesn't agree. So when one of the most important jobs at the top level at Newfoundland Labrador Hydro, what does that look like? Whether or not Mr. Wakeham wants Jennifer Williams to continue or whether Miss Williams wants to continue, knowing that the Premier doesn't agree with the work that they've done, and her specifically, as part of the negotiating team. So what does that look like into the future? We can talk about anything inside the world of the Upper Churchill because it's just too important to not have continued public discourse and questions or comments, whatever you see fit. Let's talk about it. All right, the one thing we all do is have to eat. Man, I grocery shopped yesterday. It's exhausting. So grocery prices are not only out of control, and the concept of shrinkflation, we're paying more for less, is grocery prices are up 4% year over year, based on September's pricing. If you look at beef, which, boy, oh boy, you really got to consider a second mortgage if you want to get into buying some beef, it is outrageously expensive. So you see the struggling look in people's eyes while they shop and carrying around the flyer and being very careful with what they put in their cart or in their bag. But where does any of the solution lie here? We can talk about supply chain interruptions. And yes, if you ask farmers, it's not just about whether it be an industrial carbon tax or what have you. The way that the agricultural world in the last number of years has struggled with floods and fires and droughts and insects is a big contributing factor. You can add in things like the still remaining confusion regarding tariffs and all the rest of it, but where are the controls? When the Competition Bureau had a careful look at it, and we know that the grocery retail world is dominated by a handful of players. But what was lost sight of is it wasn't just about competition for shelf space. It wasn't just about competition for these small and medium-sized grocers. A lot of it had to do with the control over distribution that the big players had. When they wanted it, they got it. But the smaller and the more medium-sized grocers had to stand on the sidelines and hope for a few crumbs and hope to see their orders get satisfied, as opposed to, of course, in the world of corporate Canada, big versus little, the winner is always the same. It's the big player. So grocery prices up 4% year over year. Oh, man, oh, man. And, there's no surprise then when you see, like, the Single Parents Association. Some of these things are real interesting measures of where we are. Over 1,200 children have already requested support and Christmas gifts, I guess their parents or caregivers, from the Single Parents Association. So previous years, able to satisfy, or what they call provide magic, to 800 to 900 kids at most. Used to be, you could make specific requests for gift cards or winter clothing or very specific gifts. Now, just the list includes your children's interests. They've also scaled back the value of gifts from 200 to around 150. There's also an opportunity for families to sponsor a family who would be on this list. And you know, when we're talking about the 23rd of October, that 1,200 number's going to grow. They only opened up the portal last week. So again, you know, when we try to block the bus here, going back to school, when we have our coats for kids, every single organization doing some of this charitable work in the community, the demands are up. And at the exact same time, the capacity or resources for folks who would like to be donors has been reduced. So anyway, if Danielle over at the Single Parents Association would like to come on and talk about it and help further paint a picture of what's happening there, let's go ahead and do it. All right, a couple of very quick ones before we get to you. So last night, the Prime Minister had a speech to talk about what I guess could be considered foreshadowing of what's going to be in the budget. And we don't know. It's hard to dig into the vagaries that were offered in the speech last night, but one thing is obviously a key focus is trying to expand markets and diversify beyond reliance on the United States. And some pretty lofty goals associated with that offered by the Prime Minister. Then it's spending and defense procurement and what have you. But while we haven't heard much from, and of course I was away yesterday, I'm not sure exactly what was discussed, but the Auditor General of Canada, Karen Hogan, I mean, was there any talk about that yesterday, Dave? I mean, her reports, CRA, defense procurement, housing for the military, those types of things. Holy smokes. Some of the revelations are off the charts. CRA demand is up to need to deal with someone directly, but then accuracy of information, the timeliness with which you get to speak with someone at CRA is a huge problem. Something in the neighborhood of 87% of calls never did make it to the intended recipient. What? Then it's the time you have to wait. And then it's the accuracy or the inaccuracy of information given to you by representatives of CRA. So if you read the Karen Hogan story, the Auditor General story, on any of those fronts, they're too big to leave by the wayside, I would suggest, so we can do it. And if you want to pick up on anything you heard regarding the Prime Minister's speech last night, you know, they're talking about an affordable budget. I guess we'll have to wait and see. No sense me guessing and to try to read between all the lines offered by the Prime Minister last night, but holy smokes. And then, of course, regardless, the Prime Minister and the Liberals are going to have to find a dance partner. They're going to have to find one other party to support the budget. It's a confidence motion, right? So let's look around. The Conservative Party of Canada, nope. You can predict that. I mean, they're not going to support the Liberal government. Of course they're not. The NDP, maybe. Just maybe, but even without official party status, it's only number of votes that count as opposed to the NDP's official party status on the National Front. Then the Bloc Québécois, maybe. But that only happens if there's distinct pandering, which has not been unusual in the past, distinct pandering to Quebecers. Because the Bloc only care about Quebec. You know, they have put forward things like add the 10% increase in old age security to 65 to 75 as opposed to simply 75 years of age and older. But unless there's a lot of Quebec pander stuff in here, the Bloc may not be a dance partner. So you never know. I'm going to guess that there's going to be some support from the NDP to allow the minority Liberal Parliament to proceed into the future, but we've been waiting a long time for this budget, no matter how you slice it. So if you want to take that on or anything else, let's do exactly that. All right, we're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us, sir. Email address is openline@vocm.com. But when we come back, let's have a great show. That can only happen when and how? If you're in the queue. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's begin on line number one. Say good morning to the Mayor of Stephenville Crossing. That's Lisa Lucas. Mayor Lucas, you're on the air.
Hello, Patty. Thanks for taking my call.
Happy to do so. Welcome to the show.
You weren't here yesterday, or you were on the show yesterday with Linda, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
She took a call from one of our longtime callers to your show, usually with complaints about our council or town staff, whatever, Dave Kane. Normally I tend to ignore what he has to say, but this time, where I was invited by Linda to respond, I decided it was time to respond and put this issue he's brought up to rest. So I don't think you listen to the show, so if you don't mind indulging me, I'd like to go over all of the false claims he made, because none of them were accurate, to say the least. And I'm hoping you're going to give me the time to address them all.
Let's do it.
Okay. We had 2 new councillors came on board this year. Both of them are fantastic, longtime volunteers. One recently moved back from Ontario, and he brings with him a wealth of experience in the finance, Kim Nolan has been a long-time volunteer with our children, and it was me exactly who nominated her and encouraged her to run. I also encouraged a lot of other local volunteers in town to run, but nobody stepped up. But the two that did step up were elected. The gentleman, Mr. Brake, did receive the most votes, but for many, 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 many years, we have not gone with the tradition of offering the mayor or the person who polled the most votes the mayorship. That stopped long ago, and it stopped because at a previous election we were reported for doing that, and we were told that we had to follow Section 28 of the Act, and since that time we've always done it. We've had other people in the past who polled the most votes and were not offered the mayorship, and it wasn't an issue like it's become with this one, with Mr. King, because he keeps bringing it up. So I want to put that to bed today. During the meeting of October 6th, he stated, and he wasn't there, so what he's getting is secondhand information, and I guess it's like the telephone game that we played in school. A lot of it got misconstrued or misinterpreted. But anyway, on October 6th, before the election began, the meeting was chaired by our administrative clerk, Yvonne Young. And before she had a chance to start the meeting, one of our counselors asked if he could speak, and he brought up the tradition of offering the mayorship to Mr. Brake. Ms. Young informed him that no, we have to follow the act, and some discussion ensued. I asked to speak, and I reminded him that a previous councillor who had polled the most votes was not offered the mayorship, and that it wouldn't be fair to them to do so with Mr. Brake. So he conceded, and the nominations process began. I was nominated as well as Mr. Brake, and I won the nomination. And I think that's the craw that's getting under his skin, I guess. So from that, he said that I went on open line and said that only people with experience should run. That was not true. As you know, I was not on open line. I did make a Facebook post addressing it because it was causing a lot of buzz in town, I guess. And that, I guess, didn't satisfy him. Then he said that because I said that you had to have experience, where did I get the experience? That I didn't have the experience when I became mayor 8 years ago, but he forgets that prior to that, I was on council for 16 years. So that's 24 years of experience. He also said that it was an elaborate plan. He kept going on with this. It was all a plan. It was all planned. She wasn't going to run, and then all of a sudden, a couple of days after, she said she was going to run. Now, Patty, whether I decided to run or not run is certainly none of his business. I had my own reasons for, in the beginning, thinking that I wanted to give up after 24 years because I had just retired from teaching and thought, well, maybe I should take a break from all of it. But then I lost my brother, and that sent me into a depression. So I had a lot of calls from residents, a lot of messages saying, you've done great things and we want you to stay. So I did, because I realized the closer it got to nomination day, the more I realized there was still work that had to be done that we had initiated as a council. And that being, we secured the courthouse for Stephenville Crossing. We worked with the MHA at the time, Scott Reed, and we were awarded the contract. That involved many meetings with ministers over 2 years. And funny thing is, Mr. Kane went on open line last year claiming that it was him that did it, even though I never saw him at none of those meetings. And we're also, for the last year and a half, when it was announced by government that a new long-term care center was going to be built in Bay St. George. Well, we've had the long-term care center since 1976, and we definitely did not want to see that leave our community. We lost a college. We don't have a huge tax base here, and we were not letting the long-term care center go on our watch. Our town manager, Yvonne Young, mentioned that we had a lot of acreage in a really beautiful section of town that overlooks the ocean, not near the low water level. And so we met with, at the time, Minister Fred Hutton. We went into St. John's. We spoke with him. We invited him out here. He came. We showed him the spot and told him that we would donate the land because it was donated to us. We have several hundred acres, but anyway, after a month or so, we received the public announcement that Steamboat Crossing was going to be awarded the new long-term care center. Now, needless to say, we were ecstatic. It's needed. I'm hoping, and I'm really hoping, that the new premier doesn't rescind on that. I mean, I think as a region, Bay St. George region, we all have to look out for each other. I mean, Steamboat already has, a strong business and other government buildings in their area, in their town. So I hope that they will honor that and let us continue to grow with the long-term care center. Let's see what else.
That's a lot.
It is a lot, yeah. Like, I got to tell you, I don't know what his problem is. It's been an issue with him for years. It doesn't matter what good we do, he could never say good job. Never done it. I mean, this is a man who has done a beautiful job with the Garden of Hope in Stephenville, along with Miss Rosie Keats. And I mean, kudos. It's fantastic. It's a cancer garden that they built by the hospital. I absolutely love it. And I'll give credit where credit is due. But he can never return that. All he does is create division. He causes problems. And, like Mr. Brake, fantastic gentleman. Wonderful working with him. I mean, the first meeting went fantastic. You can tell he's a team player. But then you've got someone like this interfering instead of letting us do our job, which is to make sure that we can secure the long-term care center, that we can attend the opening of the new courthouse and get along with the business.
Okay, so setting the record straight, fine by me. Now that you've done that much on air with correcting what you think are falsehoods or exaggerations or straight up lies from Mr. Kane, fair enough. Are you planning on doing anything else about it?
No, I mean, we had a group discussion as a council about, contacting our lawyers and giving him a cease and desist. But for the most part, he doesn't have the audience you think he has. Matter of fact, I have a lot of people who call and say, my God, the town crier is at it again, or municipalities, he's a known caller to them. He told Linda yesterday that, it was all a plan to get me mayor, and that he called municipal affairs and they wouldn't come out and investigate it. Rightly so, because there was nothing to investigate. We followed the act. We held the nominations. I succeeded. Case closed. So I don't know what he expects to accomplish. What he's doing is interfering with the reputation of our town, the reputation of our council, who has always gotten along. You've never seen our town council in the news, and you never will, because we've always worked great together. We're financially very stable. We have a great working staff. We have a great office administration. Okay. She knows her business. So it's time for him to get over it.
Mayor Lucas, I appreciate the time. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Appreciate it.
All I want to say is, again, as a council, we've worked with, Scott Reed when he was our Liberal MHA. We worked with Joan Burke when she was our PC representative at MHA, and we're looking forward to working with Hal Cormier, our new PC MHA, and we're hoping that we'll continue that great relationship with government that we've always had.
Appreciate the time, Mayor Lucas. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Fair enough. I didn't hear any of the calls, so I was kind of flying blind there. Just a couple of very quick references. Every now and then I'll get an email about how come we don't talk about this, how come we don't talk about that. again, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. And you can bring forward whatever topic is important to you. No topic too big or too small. But a couple of specific ones is, how come I didn't mention the price of Jays tickets? All right, I mean, I actually looked at the price of Jays tickets. It's ridiculous. And, you know, it's funny to watch someone like Doug Ford, whose government in 2018 scrapped any legislation to protect the consumer from the exorbitant prices of ticket resale, now talking about having to do something about it. I mean, there was seats that were generally $350 or over $7,000. There are seats behind home plate that were $40,000 a piece. I mean, it's outrageous, right? And I suppose things are worth what anyone's willing to pay for it. So, yeah, so there's my thoughts on Jay's tickets prices. They're too high. The other one was, why am I always so loath or afraid to talk about things like the Epstein files? Look, we can talk about that. I mean, basically, the party in power is protecting the elites and the billionaires and the monarchy and whoever else is on the list. It's as simple as that. And again, it kind of feels weird to have to say this out loud. If there's any Democrats or businessmen or businesswomen or whoever on the list representing whatever party or whatever economic status in this world, if you raped a kid, go to prison. Like, this should not be hard to say out loud. So, and apparently there's a Canadian billionaire on the list. That's what we're told. That was part of Senate testimony in the United States. So, yeah. And there's only one party who can release it, and they won't. So, is the assertion that they're protecting people on the list? Of course. Anyway, let's see here. Let's get to the break. When we come back, topic up to you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Tom. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Quick thing before I get to my point. As if I wasn't getting enough calls dealing with disability issues, I went to and I bought a new car yesterday, and I guess the young man I bought the car from was the first car he's ever sold. And they have a tradition where, it just happens to be an old Air Force tradition, where you cut his tie and things, and I didn't realize it, but I guess it gets posted to social media, so my phone has been going off the hook, saying I'm some kind of a media star, just what I needed. But the point being that for every referral, I guess I get $100. So if anybody wants to go to Nissan and buy a vehicle and say they saw the video, I'll give the $100 to their charity of choice. So for that, I hope somebody goes there and they'll get the $100. I'll get the $100 and I'll give it to charity. But the main reason I'm calling this morning is we were fortunate enough that a gentleman donated to us a front seat for a vehicle. It replaces the seat that's already in the vehicle, and what it does, it's remote controlled, and it lifts up the person, turns them, lets them get out through the door, lowers it to the ground so that a person can get in a wheelchair. This particular seat is worth $15,000 US. And of course, as we do with all of the things at the Hub, we donate them to somebody who needs it. So if anybody needs this thing and can use it, it came from a Dodge van. So, but I think it would fit most vans. I was just coming out of Lawton's picking up a description, and surprisingly, I've seen a lady transferring from the passenger side to a wheelchair, and I mentioned it to the man, I assume was her husband, that was helping her, and I said I had it, and he was overjoyed. So he's supposed to come and see me tomorrow morning at 9, and if he doesn't, then I'm encouraging your callers to give me a call, and if it can fit in their van, they can certainly have it.
That's awesome. I've seen one of these things in action. You can only imagine the difference it makes. It might be the difference between being able to get out or not. And I don't mean out of the van. I mean out of the house. So that's very helpful. Are you just giving this away to someone who needs it, Tom, or how are we going to handle it?
No, we just give it away to somebody who's deserving. Now, as you know, Patty, in the past, we've had issues with giving away expensive pieces of equipment, and the next thing I know, I'm looking on the various buy and sell type of platforms, and I see these things there, and I lose it. So please don't do this. If you need it and you can't afford this thing, and most people, of course, couldn't afford this thing because it's just out of their price range, and we try and assess it when we give it away, because we do give away this stuff. That's our role in life, is to help people that need these things. So if you need it, we give it away the same as we give away all of our disability aids. And then when they don't need it anymore, they return it to it, and we circulate it again. So, yes, it's just given to a deserving person.
Terrific. And if folks are curious here, we're talking with Tom Badcock from The Hub here in St. John. So if you are in need, and please only if you are in need, give Tom a call and get this arranged. We can contact us and we can help middleman it if required. Tom, good on you this morning. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Patty. Appreciate taking my call.
Anytime. All the best.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Will I take one here, Dave, or do you want me to get to the break on time, or take one? Okay, let's do that. Let's go to line number 4. Diatra, you're on the air.
Hello, Patty. How are you this morning?
Doing okay. How about you?
I'm calling in the open line. So to chat about something, I just want to thank you for taking my call. And what I want to talk about is healthcare, actually, and a long-standing issue of the lack of leadership to actually do anything to help people who are suffering and in pain and waiting for answers. And the reason, and I'll explain the situation, or the reason for my call, it came to my attention yesterday through social media that a patient admitted to the Carbonear Hospital with a potential cancer diagnosis has been waiting there with his family for 10 days without any answers. Delays in action on testing, missing paperwork, and a feeling that they have been ignored by a system that's supposed to care for them and help them get answers they need. He was supposed to be transferred to the Health Sciences Center for the care and testing that he needed. This did not happen and has not happened yet. And here's what I want to talk about. I should note that these people are part of my family as well. Why has this patient not been transferred to the Health Sciences Center? You know, why did this not happen immediately? And we don't have the answer to that necessarily. But beyond that, why did his family have to take to social media to plead for help, as many people have to do, and no doubt many people have called in and spoke to you about this, because they weren't getting any satisfaction in the system? And my final question is, why did the MHA from Placentia St. Mary's, who represents these constituents, tell them and their family, as I understand it, that there was nothing she could do because of a change in government? My question is, isn't that her job, to advocate for constituents when they need the help? Is it so difficult to pick up the phone and find solutions for people, ask questions, and get back to them? These are questions that a lot of people are asking right now about a lot of things.
Yeah, a couple of initial thoughts. Like, even if it's an answer you don't want to hear, for instance, we don't have a bed. That's better than crickets. And I'm just always mind-boggled as to why people can't get straightforward answers to straightforward questions. Insofar as political intervention, you know, same thing we talk about the courts, like I mentioned last week or earlier this week on the show, is direct political intervention there. This is not about your family, because when it's your family, of course, emotions rule the roost, as they would in my family. Should it depend on who has the most powerful MHA? That's my worry when we talk about things like operations in healthcare. Like, should it matter that if you're a constituent in Stephenville, Port-au-Port, and your member is the Premier, that you have a better chance versus if you're someone who's newly elected opposition member? That's one of the worries I have when we talk like this. What do you think about that, Tiatra?
Well, I'm glad you said that. And first of all, thank you for also saying that even if it is an answer that someone doesn't want to hear, at the very least, get back to people, you know, and provide them with some sort of guidance on what will happen next, if it's this, you know, et cetera, et cetera. On the matter of, you know, constituency work, you know, for me, and, you know, to make it clear to listeners, I've never been a politician, provincially or otherwise. But I know the importance of constituency work, and it doesn't matter what side of the government you sit on. It is your job to speak with residents who elected you and find answers and work with them and work with other people around you. It doesn't matter what side of government you're on. That's your job. That's what you need to be doing. And you need to get back to those people. If they call you and you never respond, or if they call you and you say, The answer is no. Again, whether you're in government or not, the work of politicians shouldn't be to say no to people there isn't something for you. The work of politicians should be to say, hang on, let me see what we can find out about this, and let's see what we can do here, because that's called navigational support. And for me, and what I'm hearing, not just, and this is not just an issue unique to my family's circumstances. I live in Bay Roberts. I have heard horror stories about what is happening in that hospital in Carbonear, and no family should have to go through it, and they should be getting the answers from both, administrative leadership, government leadership, and at the very least, their MHAs.
Yeah, and, advocating is obviously their job. And what I will add to the response you got from your MHA is, look, it doesn't matter if government is transitioning at this moment in time, because it's not a decision that's going to be made in the House of Assembly. It's an operational decision made at NL Health Services, and the health science is proper. So it doesn't matter if the government hasn't been sworn in, because healthcare didn't stop, right? Nothing stopped.
No.
Just the politics have stopped. Well, that's not even true either. It's just having a party actually sworn in as government has stopped. This is a healthcare operational decision. So any MHA, newly elected or re-elected, can absolutely do whatever they can to advocate directly with operations. Because, government is the politics of it all. Healthcare is the operations of it all.
Exactly. And a side note to that, and again, for listeners, there's a lot of people out there who are dealing with this and who don't know how to navigate and who may feel fearful or hesitant to speak up. They may not even know where to go for help that they might need. It's our job to speak. And it's our job to say, no, this is not okay. And we deserve better from all the people who are representing us, because as people within the system and as patients, they don't have the power, and they're at the whim of the decision-making that potentially comes from, a healthcare professional. I'm not attacking healthcare professionals. No. I'm just simply saying it's a power imbalance that happens there from the patient to the system. And you need someone to step up and speak, for sure.
Yeah, and sometimes I get the feeling that one member of the House of Assembly or another, when asked to do things like this, which are emotional and traumatic and complex, when they say there's nothing I can do, it's probably because they're afraid to try. Because then they might have to come back to you and say, I was unable to help, which is, for them, probably an easier conversation than I'm sorry I can't help. Or more difficult conversation.
And maybe... And maybe that's just the easy solution,
yep.
Or just, and again, in my experience, and I've done a lot of work with helping people and navigating systems, and in my experience, it's actually not that complicated to pick up the phone and figure out what's going on and try to track a solution. And if you run into a wall, then you have to ask, well, is there something else that's needed here, and is that something else we should be considering? And, that's part of the process. So, and to your point about when government is changing over, like, people's lives don't stop.
Nope.
Their needs don't stop, and their healthcare issues and the waiting and the pain and suffering and families, like, all of that doesn't stop just because, somebody's running an election.
100%, which is why when I talked off the top, formulating the transition team, and in the coming weeks, cabinet and stuff, in the coming weeks, like, I get it, things aren't easy in this world, but time is pretty important here, regardless of what we're talking about insofar as the operations of government. And that includes, obviously, 40 elected members of the House of Assembly. Deatra, keep me in the loop. Keep me updated if you don't mind.
I will indeed. I'm heading to the Carbonear Hospital this afternoon to meet with this family and try to attempt to resolve it with them. So thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
I appreciate yours. Good luck.
Bye now.
Okay, bye-bye. Yeah, man, what an answer that is. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're talking tech. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Well, next week is Innovation Week 2025. To join us on line number one is the chair of the Tech NL Board of Directors. That's Joanna Brown. And good morning, Joanna. You're on the air.
Hello, Patty. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you on the show. I know Dave already gave you the heads up. We'll start our chat here. We'll take a news break and come back and finish. How's that?
Sounds perfect.
Terrific. So just a couple of quickies to get it started. The tech sector here is way bigger than people realize insofar as contribution to GDP. And, you identify a problem, propose a tech or an innovative solution. So it's one thing for the creation of the solution. It's another thing to pitch it, to get it monetized, to go through the different rounds of funding. So talk us through what you're going to be talking about at Innovation Week next week, because a lot of really smart people can create a lot of things and struggle to get the money to further their cause. So talk about the importance of a pitch.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And so it's not just are there a lot of smart people in the province. There are tons of smart people in the province. Can you come up with an idea that can provide value to a potential customer? Definitely. There's lots of programs to kind of support that here. Can you commercialize, which is what you're talking about? And commercializing is around how do you provide value to cold markets and what does that look like? And so we actually have a really great lineup of speakers, both people who are coming in who've had kind of successful growth through that. But we also have a lot of local CEOs who've done the exact same thing. And so I think when you look at the tech sector in this province, everyone is trying to compete at a global level. So you really can't grow a company in the tech sector unless you think that you can be the very best in the world. And that's kind of how you grow and how you see those big commercialization at scales. And so we have examples of folks who are doing this already. And so Innovation Week, which is next week, October 27th to 29th at the St. John's Convention Center, that is going to bring together a lot of this ecosystem. And when we think about the ecosystem, we think about a lot of people, right? There's partners, there's supporters, there's academic institutions, there's Genesis, there's government, and then there's the tech companies who are actually growing. And the way in which you can grow sustainably and why the tech sector has a big chance of being like a big economic diversifier for this province is when we're all coming together. So I think Innovation Week is a really great example of that.
Yeah, and the pitch, if I'm looking for an angel investor, that's one type of pitch. And then when you start to grow and you start to monetize, then you can bring in others who can pitch the customer, because they're kind of two different things, albeit distinct and obvious overlap. We've got some huge success stories here, and now not every company is going to be Verafin, but the importance of seeing that it can be done here. If you had to ask me that 10 years ago, I would say that's one of the big struggles we'll have in this province, is thinking, well, we're not Silicon Valley, we're not even Kitchener-Waterloo, but you can be an innovator anywhere in any corner of this world, including this province. So how should we look at the success stories, even though not everyone's Jamie King, but the next one can be the next great thing?
Definitely. So if I look back, like I joined the tech sector 15 years ago, I cannot write a line of code. I'm a business person. There was maybe 3 medium-sized companies and some startups at that time in the tech sector. Now you look at it 15 years later, it's a healthy mix of startups. We're starting to see some of those startups turn to medium-sized companies, and then we're starting to see big companies come out of that. There's been 25% growth in the last 9 or 10 years, but the tech sector is about 10,000 jobs right now, and you talked about GDP contribution. So the tech sector contributes about $1.8 billion, which is on par with some really prominent industries here around the fisheries and tourism. And what we're going to see is that continued growth, and so that's a big thing. And so we have we call Verafin a unicorn. So that is when you sell for over $1 billion. We have other unicorns being built in this province right now. There's handfuls of companies. And so, again, you don't have to be a Silicon Valley. You have to be right-sized for where you are, right? But you can grow global companies from right here in this province, and we're seeing it happen right now. Like we're seeing over $100 million in private capital from outside this province being spent in local companies in the tech sector. And then you see the positive ripple effects of that, right? When Verafin exited, you see the positive impact that has on our ecosystem. And another really great thing we have here in this province is that people are really generous with their time, and it's very connected. And so you see the heads of Spellbook, the heads of Collab, who are, some of the largest growing companies in Canada and the U.S. that are coming to Innovation Week and speaking, that are mentoring, that are involved in MUN. Like, there's lots of really great examples like that.
Let's take a break for the news and put you on hold, Joanna, because there's a lot yet to touch on before we run out of time. So I'll put you on hold, okay?
Perfect.
There we go. Joanna Brown, the chair of TechNL's board of directors. Let's take a break. We'll rejoin the conversation with Joanna, then you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's rejoin the chair of the board of directors at TechNL on line number 1. Joanna, you're back on the air.
Hello, thanks, Patty. Now I'm caught up on the news, and I'm ready to talk about Innovation Week.
Fantastic. We've mentioned Verafin a couple of times, and justifiably so. And, notably, they're staffed by somewhere in the neighborhood of 75-80% graduates of post-secondary institutions in this province. So let's talk talent. Are we on the right track, whether it be at MUN or CNA or even in the province's K-12 system here?
Yeah, so actually Innovation Week starts next week on Monday with a student event. And so we do this every year. And what it is we're going to see hundreds of post-secondary and new grads come down to the convention center. And it's a free event. You just have to register in advance at technl.ca. But you're going to see a lot of local technology employers there. And not only will they be there, but there's actually a chance to do kind of a virtual networking, almost like a speed dating networking, where they'll actually get to meet local employers. Because one thing that I think all sizes of companies here in the tech sector are great at is they want to hire local. We have come a long way in terms of making sure that we have folks who are going through development is always in big demand. Sales is always in big demand for these tech companies, and that's been the case for the last 20 years. But now we need to also support them in how they enter the workforce and what that looks like. And also, as these tech companies grow, you're going to see more and more opportunities. So we need all these things to be true at once. We need the tech sector to keep growing with all the supports in place, and we need to keep focusing on how we bring folks and new grads into the tech sector. And we're also seeing new programs being launched. So TechNL would have launched its first high school tech placement program in the last few years, and you'll see more of that coming forward.
People think tech and they think STEM, right? It's science and technology and engineering and mathematics. How about a dollop of entrepreneurship as well? How important is that?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to the right person, because I am none of those things, except for I am a business. I've got a business background, and I was curious on what folks were doing here, and I think anyone who's joining a tech company, whether it's a startup, whether it's a big company here, it's an incredible exposure. So again, most folks aren't selling into the local market. Sometimes they are, but most folks are selling into the rest of Canada, into the rest of Europe, and that gives you a lot of really great opportunities to grow your career. So you can have a really meaningful career and be based here in the province. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities for folks to take advantage of that. But all companies need what all companies need. They need finance people. They need people who have a willingness to learn. I would say most employers here, the common line is not, do you have the perfect background? It's, are you willing to work really hard and be curious enough to keep going with it?
No doubt about it. So the entrepreneurship thing, this is not really an Innovation Week conversation insofar as I think we should do more. Like we talk financial literacy, digital literacy in high school. We should really pepper the entrepreneurship spirit as well with them. And now let's talk about market and opportunity. So, there's been a bit more of a keen focus in the last 2 years-ish about domestic procurement, whether it be with the military or otherwise. So whether it be the provincial government and or the federal government, the whole concept of lowest bid wins. Of course, there's some merit and some experience and background involved, but governments really need to focus on Canadian companies, and in this province, local companies, for procurement opportunities, because it's opportunities wasted, not only for just that one contract, but that's more experience, probably grow your workforce, grow your idea, have some more horsepower, so when you go to bid on the next contract. So what do you think governments need to do or think about when we talk about procurement?
Yeah, it's always a hot topic, and I think one thing we would have done leading up to the election, TechNL, we really work obviously with our members, with our industry, so we host many kind of forums where we're getting this feedback, and so we would have put together recommendations that went to all political parties in events of the election, and we posted those on our website at technl.ca, and so one of the things now we're going to chat with is for the new premier. He responded in terms of where they want to focus their efforts, and I think he's great to work with, and that he wants to work with industry, and he's very clear that has to be industry driven. And one of the items that he would have mentioned as well is around establishing a new process for procuring innovation in this province. And so I think that is a really important piece. What you said, right? It's gone from lowest bid to value-based selling, and so that can mean a lot of things. But are they based here locally? locally, another way to think about it is how big is their workforce that is based here locally? You know, is it really their headquarters? Is a large population of their employees based here? What does that look like? You know, I remember selling into many spots into the U.S. over the years, and when you were selling into some of those states, you were at a disadvantage selling into them if you weren't from there. And so it's not that every single company that's growing here in the tech sector in this province is selling into government, but for those who can, we can innovate. If we can innovate healthcare, if we can innovate education, if we can innovate those really important things, then we should look locally first. And so I think that is it's a hot topic that's going to be discussed a lot.
And I don't know what kind of companies we have here that could be part of the defense procurement, because spending by the feds is going to explode to like $150 billion a year. We're talking massive opportunity. Last one before I let you go, Joanna. Does TechNL have any sort of, or getting any traction or any sort of status or involvement with the office in Boston? Because it's basically about economic opportunities, which would, of course, include the tech sector. You know, some people think it's a terrible idea to have that office and the $1 million annually it costs, but does TechNL have anything that's grown from that office in Boston?
So one thing I want to touch on there, because you talked about the defense as well, is that there are companies here that are very well suited to work and to avail of that. We also have a new innovation center that is meant to be provide that interconnectedness of industry. So when you think defense, when you think energy, when you think ocean, this is an innovation center that's for the ecosystem in this province to avail of. And so I think there is a lot of really good work where you can bring industry together to figure out what that looks like. But you look at companies that exist right now, like Solace Power, like Kraken Robotics, like Virtual Marine. They've been selling into the defense sector. I mean, Solace Power, they're doing enormous projects, pilot projects with Boeing, and they're bringing Boeing execs to this province because they're doing, literally like they're creating a new sector in what that looks like. And so there's definitely a place in which we should be prioritizing it, and we are prioritizing it. I think now it's how do we elevate that is a big piece of it.
Yeah, because even when we hear like the Prime Minister talking about it, but at the exact same time, a contract worth somewhere like $110 million went to an American company for the night vision goggles or something. You know, so we've just got to identify those opportunities and work towards taking advantage of what's coming next. So I'll ask just quickly about the Boston office, what that might mean for TechNL and whether or not it's meant anything already.
Sure. So, any place in which we're elevating the tech sector here, in which we are sharing the stories, in which we are interconnecting folks, that is always beneficial. And so it's not about being on an island and staying on this island, right? It's about how do we reach out, how do we elevate, how do we make sure we're connecting the right folks to the right people. So anything that's happening similar to that, I think is a good opportunity. And then how do we just bring that forward as well? And so for anyone who does want to know more, who wants to get connected into the tech sector more, next week at Innovation Week is a really great way to do that. We're going to have people from all sectors, from every single sector coming to it. We have some really great keynotes as well that are coming in. And with a bit of a Newfoundland and Labrador flair, I think we're also doing some innovative things. So you're going to see the very first Battle of the Bands, which is raising money for charity. And you're also going to say, Patty, you talked about it earlier, but the importance of pitches. And so Genesis and TechNL, they're also bringing in Michelle Romanoff from Dragon's Den, who is going to help do the pitch and pick for Genesis. So there's going to be a lot of topics covered, but a lot of what we're talking about here. How do we elevate our sector? How do we continue to break into bigger markets?
Appreciate your time this morning, Joanna. Good luck and enjoy Innovation Week next week.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Patty. Bye.
Bye-bye. Joanna Brown is the chair of TechNL's Board of Directors. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to the program lead at the CNIB. That's Kelly Picco. Good morning, Kelly. You're on the air.
Good morning. I am calling today. CNIB nationwide offers a variety of social and recreational programs for participants who are blind or partially sighted. These programs and services are offered in person and virtually. The virtual programs, for the most part, are offered to participants nationwide, but the in-person programs are offered to participants locally who are blind or partially sighted. So we have a number of local programs here in Newfoundland that are social and recreational, and we are also offering a large variety of other programs here in Newfoundland in different communities around the province. So in order to offer these programs, we do need volunteers to help run them. We don't have a large number of staff here in Newfoundland, so the more volunteers we can get to help out, the better. And volunteers are able to discuss with me times that work for them to offer these programs and locations that work for them to offer the programs. So if you're interested in learning more about social and recreational programs that are being offered, if you're interested in offering a different program, or if you're interested in volunteering, you can contact me at CNIB. My phone number is 709-691-6478, and I will be happy to chat with you about programs, ideas, and volunteering.
Give us an idea of some programs that are available at that CNIB that people might not even be aware of. I think people understand some of the basics.
Well, a lot of the social and recreational programs do consist of fun. So here at CNIB in St. John's, we have a karaoke night. We have a social, which is once a month we'll go out to dinner, or we'll meet at CNIB for a coffee, or we'll just have a chat as a group. And I have a Music and Friends group. So this is a virtual program where participants can listen to a live performer that may be a local performer or a nationwide performer. So participants can listen to the performer for an hour, and they may even want to sing along for a bit.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, a bit of socializing is as important as some of the other type of programs you operate. Kelly, appreciate the time. Anything else you want to tell us this morning?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. And if anyone is interested in volunteering or attending programs, please call me and I will be happy to discuss this with you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Just a quick one, and once again, this side of the corner of my eye, email kind of stuff. It's, again, if I don't bring it up, doesn't mean it's not worth bringing up. I'll leave that up to you. And this one, it comes from a listener who's originally from here, but now lives in the province of Alberta, like many people originally from this province do. And it's about the pathway to any potential referendum on whether or not they should remain as part of Canada, which is mind-boggling that we're here again. So one thing that did happen is that the Premier, Daniel Smith, lowered the threshold regarding the number of signatures required to trigger a vote on separation here in Alberta, and of course separating from the country. So it looks like they're coming up shy on the number of signatures required. When asked about it, the Premier, who just last week said that she's not pushing this concept, even though she clearly is. I mean, the Premier lowered the signature threshold to trigger a referendum, and when asked as to whether or not it was what she thought about the fact that it looks like they're coming up short, she said, that's a shame. Why is that a shame? And the question apparently was going to be as fundamental as, should Alberta remain in Canada? And it's organised not by the UCP, but of course by the Forever Canadian movement. But that's still ongoing in the province of Alberta. Now, I've never seen a poll that shows that the referendum would be successful in triggering what would then be arduous, complicated, lengthy discussions about how it actually works, or if it could even work, period. But yeah, and I'm not even sure where that emailer thought about it, whether or not he or she was in favor of the separation conversation that's going on in Alberta. And of course, it'll make constant reference to Quebec on that front. I don't know why, if it's so-called, if it was a mistake for Quebec and a problem for Quebec to have initiated separation conversations over the decades, why is it any different in Alberta? And for those listening, like, I just seem to think it's a terrible idea, and I hope it never happens. But we'll continue to have that conversation, I suppose, into the future. But even though the threshold was lowered, they might be coming up still a bit shy from that automatic triggering of a referendum. And again, I don't know why people get mad at questions being asked. And for me to ask questions about a Upper Churchill MOU referendum, for starters, we don't really know a whole lot about it or the potential for it. So I'll reiterate the questions because I think they're fair. Is number one, when? So if it's going to be during the negotiations or after a definitive contract is returned or contracts are returned, so we have a bit more detail and put, the cart back behind the horse, and exactly what the question is, and is it only one question? So I don't know why people get mad at me for asking questions about things that have been pledged or promised by the incoming premier. I mean, we're talking about something that's pretty consequential in the future. $500 billion worth of complex issues at the expansion of the upper, the transmission to accommodate expansion, the potential for Gaul, the transmission associated with Gaul. Some people will lean on, well, we need the money. We can't be panicked. I think it's very similar now, obviously at a much different scale. When we have conversations about the struggle is real and the need for additional revenue streams, whether it be for a municipality and or for the provincial government, sometimes that puts us in a funny spot. I'll give a small scale example. Stephenville Airport. For a long time, like former Mayor Tom O'Brien just passed away last week, he was flagging the worries at the Stephenville Airport for a long time and a long time ago. And with that conversation and the way it sounded, of course, when Carl Diamond comes to town making these extraordinarily lofty promises and none of which have come to pass, of course, people saw that golden egg. They finally saw that carrot at the end of the stick, and consequently, bad decisions were made. We can't be forced into a bad decision here, but yeah, when's the independent review? What exactly is going on with that? And when would a referendum be? And because the Premier designate, Mr. Wakeham, has said it would be a binding referendum. So we'll keep asking the basic, obvious questions about such an important issue, right? Right. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to Lee Harvey with the Core MacB Company. Good morning, Lee. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning to you.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning to you, Lee. Welcome to the show.
Yes, nice to be here. I spoke to you last year, and I know we've been talking about BE. This morning is...
Lee, the connection is really terrible. Let's do a little shuffling around the room, see if we can clear it up.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, that's better. Go ahead.
Good, yeah. Cell phones are wonderful. I just found it interesting. You were talking to co-innovation today. We're crossing over today. They have a co-cafe set up in their building and down around Stavanger in the old Rona building. And they contacted us. They wanted to connect with some local suppliers. So as a bee company, they found that they thought it was pretty interesting, and so they said, well, we'd be interested in collaborating with them. So we're going to be there tomorrow. They're going to use our product in some of their coffees and honey butters on some of their particular bagels and whatever. So we're going to be there tomorrow from 11 until 2 to answer any questions at the Co Cafe, and we're also going to carry our room tour in the store, our infused honeys and regular honeys and some honey butters, and so generally that's why I'm calling.
Lee, how has your company grown over the years?
Very well. This is going into our 6th year. We're over 100 hives now. We started off, small, 7 or 8 hives, and we have so many outlets. I'm going to say maybe 10 outlets across the island where we have our product. So we've grown tremendously, and we will continue to grow. And we're always coming up with new products. We just launched a new product, chocolate infused honey. We have a complete line of honey butters, partridge berry, blueberry, cinnamon, and some other things. So we've grown, pretty well, and we will continue to grow. With support, obviously, of the federal provincial government through the SCAP program. And the Beekeeping Association is starting to kind of level off. There was a tremendous amount of movement on this past 5 years, and now it's kind of leveling off. This is probably the 5th year now that really that beekeeping started to move. I want to say 5th, some are 5 years, and beekeeping really started catching on here in Newfoundland. And so we're continuously having growth.
Yeah, I mean, even in the world of backyard beekeeping, it's amazing to me. I know people just over the course of the last 5 years, and some of this, of course, was during the pandemic and some of the restrictions people were facing. Buddies of mine who I didn't think had any interest in anything like that whatsoever, they have backyard they're backyard beekeepers. It's truly amazing stuff. Like, personally, I think some people might be half interested in it, but are kind of afraid of bees. Well, how do people overcome that? Or how do you, approach the fear that many, many people have with bees and the concept of beekeeping?
Business, and we also
yeah, connection's gone again there now, Lee. Dave, I'm going to put him on hold, and I'll let you speak with him, see if we can't get a bit of a reasonable connection. The first thing that comes to my mind when we talk about bees in the backyard. Most people would avoid bees at all costs, even though obviously a healthy bee population is critically important. And we're lucky in this province. We have an extremely healthy bee population. In other parts of the world, they're struggling mightily. We talk about agriculture off the top and things like floods and fires and droughts and insects, but the places that have an unhealthy bee population, that's an additional struggle that's becoming extremely difficult to overcome. We're lucky here, because remember all the debates that were being had about importing bees or not importing bees and whether or not they could sit in quarantine to be proven to be safe to add to the bee population, which always seemed like a very risky venture to me. Given the stories that we read elsewhere, when the bee population becomes unhealthy and what that means for the very fundamentals of growing food. So I think we're pretty lucky around here. Let's go to line number 2 and say good morning to the chair at L'Arche Avalon. That's Sheila McKinnon-Drover. Good morning, Sheila. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks for taking my call.
Happy to do it.
I think the last time that anyone talked about L'Arche on your line was when Nancy Reid called in. I happened to hear her. You know Nancy, of course. She's the executive director of the Coalition for Persons with Disabilities. And she called after our amazing, wonderful announcement from government about funding for L'Arche Avalon. And we're very pleased about that. But that's not why I'm calling today. I'm calling about to let your listeners know about our annual weekend. We have our annual gathering. We have one every month, just with our members and anyone else who's interested to drop in. But this is one weekend in the fall. We have 2 full days on Saturday, the 25th, and Sunday, the 26th. This year it's out at the Sunshine Camp on Thorburn Road. And it'll go from 10 to 4 on Saturday and 10 to 2 on Sunday, and we do serve lunch. So anybody is welcome to come, and obviously, well, and I guess a lot of your listeners know that L'Arche is an organization which supports adults with intellectual disabilities, and so at our annual gathering, our regional leader will be here. She's from Halifax, and she's bringing a core member with her. What we call core members are adults who have intellectual disabilities. And we're having 4 other visitors as well, 2 from Antigonish and 2 from Cape Breton. So we're looking forward to a lovely weekend, and invite your listeners who have adults in their family or who are caregivers of adults with intellectual disabilities to join us if they'd like to.
Sounds about right. Before I let you go, though, Sheila, can you give us or give the listeners a little bit more detail about the funding announcement? Because we did speak with Nancy Reid about it, but now that we have you, what was the funding announcement? What does it entail?
Well, this was before all the promises from all the various different leaders. This was a commitment in writing, actually, from government to provide funding up to $2 million for the construction of the 2 homes that we're planning to build here in St. John's, plus $1.6 million in operating costs and that will be raised as according to the cost of living index when the houses open. Now we already have land in Pleasantville. We bought that from the federal government, from Canada Lands, and so we're just waiting now for the new government to get in place and get to work, and we'll carry on with the planning of the building and the construction of the building. So we're very excited about that.
Terrific. And before we run out of time, Sheila, give us the details one more time for this weekend and what people can expect.
Well, there'll be lots of music. We have in-house musicians, and we also have our music circle, which is Jan Bewley and her husband, David, and we have 5 students coming from the university who are music students, and they'll be conducting the hour-long between 2 and 3 on Saturday. And we'll have music throughout the whole weekend, but there'll be some videos and lots of games. It's all inside. We hope to be able to go out for a walk if we don't get the rain this forecast. But it's from 10 to 4, Patty, on Saturday with lunch served, hot lunch. And then on Sunday, it's from 10 to 2, and our lunch, we'll serve lunch then, but it'll be a lighter lunch like sandwiches and wraps or something like that. So it's going to be a fun weekend. That's the point of it, and a time to get together and get to know one another. And we're looking forward to it. This year, it's talking about interconnectedness because our whole philosophy is one of inclusion, and so we're celebrating that. And you're welcome to come too if you'd like. We'd love to see you.
I appreciate the invitation, Sheila. Congratulations on the funding, and have a good time this weekend.
Thanks very much, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sheila McKinnon-Drover is the chair at L'Arche Avalon. Just quickly, and this just happened, so the Canada Industrial Relations Board has dismissed an argument made by Canada Post Union or Workers Union that, of course, the government ordered them back to work using the authority afforded to them by Section 107 of the Canada Labour Code. The Canada Industrial Relations Board says it is not unconstitutional, so that order has now stood. The use of Section 107 has happened a lot here in the recent past. It's how they stopped the rail strike. It's how they stopped the port strike. It's what they were talking about insofar as the Air Canada flight attendants. And remember, the leadership of that particular union was saying they'd be willing to pay the piper. They would tell their flight attendants not to go back to work if they were ordered back to work, which comes with significant fines and the potential to go to jail. So Canada Post unionized workers have been told that the back to work order is not unconstitutional, what that means into the future. And even just that broad stroke relationship between the federal government and people who are working in federally regulated industries and represented by one union or another. And I think people kind of undersell just how many industries are federally regulated in this country. Maybe we can touch on that or whatever you want to talk about right after this break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 3. Trent, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Morning.
Just wanted to make people aware there may be a moose hanging around just east of Gamble River on the highway. We're trying to just, make the public aware that there was an accident there this morning, but there could be a second moose hanging around, that's all.
Do we happen to know how serious that moose vehicle collision was this morning?
I'm not sure of the details, no. I know there was one moose removed from the highway. I'm not sure of the status of the vehicle, people, or anything like that, but that's all.
Well, I appreciate the heads up, Trent. And so if you're in and around that part of the Trans-Canada Highway around the Gamble River, there may indeed be yet another moose lurking. So be careful and cautious. Appreciate this, Trent. Thanks for doing it.
Have a good one, Patty.
You too, pal. All the best. Bye-bye. And I guess it's just worth throwing out there. I don't know what the weather and the visibility is like where you are. It's deteriorating here on Kenmount Road. It's really quite grey and seemingly getting a bit worse, and maybe some rain in the forecast. So it's always worthwhile to have your moose radar up and active if you're out on the highway here today. Which brings me back to this 28-year-old fella going 207 miles an hour out around Pasadena. 207. Can you imagine if anything popped up? From a rabbit to a rat, to a moose. I mean, the devastation can be left behind if there's some sort of incident or collision when you're going that breakneck speed. I just simply couldn't believe what I was reading this morning. It's all bad enough at the bottom of that story. There was a lady pulled over going 157 kilometers an hour, but 207. The only thing I've ever been in going 207 was an airplane. And, different set of circumstances. Oh, speaking of airplanes, and I was just asked, operations, have they been resumed at Wabush Airport? The answer is yes, and thankfully so. Matt, who makes these decisions? Back in 2020, Transport Canada changed the designation for the airport, and then consequently yet another designation was changed. And I guess, luckily, Phil Earle, who's a Labrador MP, was able to quickly get this rectified, and good on him. But who changes the designations without understanding that if you're going to change them, then you have to have the firefighting and crash rescue services on site? And that was for any aircraft that carried 19 passengers or more. So, unbeknownst to people in operations at the airport, they changed it again, and it never should have been changed in the first place. I mean, some of the way they head count the numbers of people flying in and or the number of aircraft coming, a lot of the count was done based on regularly scheduled flights by the airlines. But we know there's a lot of fly-in and fly-out done in charters coming in and out of Wabush. So yes, the flights have been resumed. And the pathway to reinstating all the crash rescue services and the firefighting services, they just need to be in place. I mean, that's a pretty busy airport in the big scheme of things. Let's see here. Let's get into line number 1. And good morning, Wanda. You're on the air.
Hello, Patty. Good morning. How are you doing today?
Very well, thanks. How about you?
I'm doing well, thank you. This is my first time, so forgive me if I go a little too far too fast.
You take your time. Go right ahead.
My name is Wanda Butler, and I'm a creator of a tech and an initiative here in Newfoundland. And I'm a divorce professional, we'll say, by nature. And so I've been working in the space of the family justice system for the last 10 years, since 2017. I actually acquired formal education to be able to help with the financial and property aspects of separation and help individuals to have a better understanding of it. So I'm calling because I'm really hopeful that the new government is going to pay some attention to the family justice crisis and to the need for change in our family justice system, and to do something about the archaic ways that we are rolling out justice for families that are in transition.
So let's talk a little bit about how it works today and potential changes that you think should be implemented.
Well, mindset, I'm going to say, is the first. If somebody's going through separation, our first initial instinct is to say, hey, you got to call a lawyer. But sometimes individuals might have just financial issues and it might not be legal issues. And in a crisis mode, maybe a lawyer is not what they need. They need calm. They need a place to explore their options, right? And they need a safe place. So maybe the adversarial route is not always the way to go, but that's our only initial instinct, is to recommend a lawyer. And I'm not saying that lawyers don't have a place in the process, but the process should be tailored to what their legal needs are and not exhaust their resources in trying to sort through credit card statements, for example, figure out who owns most of the debt. It makes no sense to pay legal fees, to have somebody go through your credit card statements to assign debt, and to go into debt over debt is like having your car towed when it's out of gas.
Yeah, fair point. How do you replace, look, just the concept of divorce, you know, in and of itself sounds and feels like adversarial type of conditions. Now, you can indeed have friendly parting of ways. Some are much more hostile than others. But is there actually a realistic way to avoid the adversarial concept of divorce, especially when we're talking about money?
Yes, 1,000%. 1,000%. And it's like the quote, in order to pull people, we got to stop pulling people out of the river and get further up to the mouth of the river to figure out why they're falling in. So again, it comes to the mindset. The first initial reaction is to go and fill out court forms. So we got to change the process and make it more amicable and make the financial and the property issues about the financial and property issues, and leave and maybe unbundled services, for example, where the legal fees are just for custody and child and all that kind of stuff, and it pertains to all of that. And we kind of do a streamlined process for the property and the financial part, and that gets sorted before an application is ever made for anything, and not letting people expect that they're going to get fairness 3 years down the road when all of the equity and the financial resources are completely depleted.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the emotions take over and the fight that ensues becomes more costly than just an amicable settling.
Absolutely, but we have a due diligence now to recommend that people find an alternative, an amicable way of sorting their financial affairs, because again, it's a burden on the court system for somebody to fight over equity in a home and at the end of the day lose all of that equity in legal fees and court costs. So there's got to be a better way to kind of redirect it.
Yeah. Can you give us some, I don't know how detailed you want to be here, but just paint me a picture where what you suggest would be less costly, more amicable and fairer. Just kind of walk us through a specific example.
Obtain full financial clarity. So understand exactly what you own, what you owe, what you make, and what you spend. Go through the financial part first. Immediately upon separation, you don't have to rush out to a lawyer. That year of separation can be about clearing up the financials and coming to agreement on things so that you don't have a contested divorce. So my recommendation is to go through those things, use financial professionals, use your financial advisor to assess values, and do the financial digging and gather your documents yourself.
So that kind of sounds like get your financial ducks in a row before you fight over it.
100%, 1,000%. Do the financial aspect of it. Get some clarity on your financial picture. Understand what your financially feasible options are before you actually go and say, hey, my wish list is this. And sometimes it's unrealistic expectations of being able to take over a mortgage or a family home. And you might have your feet dug in saying, hey, I'm going to fight for this and take over the family home, only to end up finding out that you don't financially qualify because of debt servicing or because of you don't have enough left over out of the equity, out of legal fees and other court costs in order to be able to secure a mortgage, right? So just understanding your financially feasible options so that when you put it forth to a mediator or to a lawyer, that it's a sound and it's a firm financial decision that you're making, and it can be vetted to be something that's in your best interest.
Absolutely. I mean, thankfully, I don't have to entertain that particular conversation on a personal level, but I've had buddies go through it. And, to watch what it means and how they wear it on their face and just how extraordinarily difficult it can be is in some form heartbreaking. It's all bad enough when the partnership dissolves, but then the aftermath of finally deciding that the separation is going to become divorce. For some, they can get through it and they can navigate their affairs financially and otherwise, but for others, it just looks overwhelming to me. Anything else you want to say this morning while we have you?
Just be kind to one another, and if there's an opportunity to explore different ways and to do it without going the adversarial route, take that opportunity, because in the long run, it's going to be your pocket and your future that's on the line. People shouldn't lose their home for their divorce.
No, you would hope not. Wanda, I appreciate you making time for the program this morning. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, I mean, you've seen it as much as I have. If you've got friends who have gone through one, especially a very contentious, adversarial, downright vicious divorce, it can be just brutal to watch, even if you're not intimately involved. And then, just something on that end. There's a concept associated with that, it's certainly not as big a deal as it is for the people who are getting the divorce. But what becomes really strange and not weird on the heels of it is how you divvy up the friends. I mean, you know as well as I do, if you came into it as a friend of the man or a friend of the woman, then on the heels of it, it can be quite awkward to continue to be friendly, even though I don't feel that way. Like I'm not going to get in the business of sharing friends, unless one side or the other did something egregious. But divvying up the friends is part of it. You know it to be true. Let's go ahead and take a break. We'll make it back. Plenty of show left for you. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to Bettina Ford. Bettina Ford was the Deputy Mayor of Gander. Now she has successfully held a seat in Gander for the Liberals, and she joins us on line 2. Bettina, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you. Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. It's been just over a week since the election. So before too much time had passed, I really wanted to call in and thank you and Open Line for all of the opportunities provided for people to engage in the election and discussion, and to thank the voters of Gander District for their support.
Let's dig into some of the issues. Number one, and this is, I think, an issue facing politicians of every stripe, provincially and federally, is members of parliament were told that they could no longer take walk-in appointments. There had to be much more security added, whether it be for the Prime Minister all the way down through the ranks. Same thing happened to John Hagee out in Gander. Changed the way that the office operated. So just give us your thoughts on, that type of issue before we get into some issues specific to the Gander District. Things have heightened. Tensions are real. Whether it be threats and or just hostility aimed at politicians is something that I think turns a lot of people away from it, but it obviously didn't you. Why?
For me, I guess it didn't turn me away. Maybe my 12 years serving in municipal politics helped me develop the skin for it a bit. But I do feel, the divisiveness, it's something to be concerned about. Now, I will say, here in Gander District, my opponent who ran for the PC party, Tom, and I are friends. We've volunteered together through the years. So the campaign in Gander was really respectful and engaging between us as candidates and with our supporters. So that was a great start to this. But, the concept of appointments versus walk-in, typically I have heard and found in my own experience when people need to reach out to their elected officials, there's usually an issue, a problem, some frustration. So having a moment to take a breath before walking into an office, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? That can help people prepare for the meeting. It can help people gather their thoughts. But it is unfortunate. I think there are really terrific community leaders who would like to be in public office, but the divisiveness and, the anonymity of social media as well, and how people, I guess, get courageous as keyboard warriors, that's concerning to people too.
Yeah, I'm not a politician, but I get that concept and I live it. Okay, let's get into some issues inside of Gander itself. So for starters, this is probably a question better for a PC candidate, or pardon me, a PC elected member. Do you happen to know when the government's being sworn in?
I do not. I'm waiting word myself on when we as MHAs will be sworn in.
Yeah, it'd be kind of interesting to know when that's going to happen so we can get down to the brass tacks. Inside Gander proper, I think we all share very similar concerns. Cost of living, access to primary care and the healthcare system and otherwise. Do you have specific issues inside Gander that you find to be the top of the pile on your desk when you get sworn in?
So there were issues, yeah, for sure, and there are in the district. The Atlantic Wildfire Center, for example, that's a huge opportunity for this district. But as soon as the election was over, right away, I started hearing from people where promises were made during this election, and people expect those promises to be fulfilled. So one issue, for example, that came up during the campaign was lack of student assistant and IRT supports for some students in schools here in the Gander District. So those parents had a meeting last night, and I felt privileged to have been invited to that and to continue that conversation. throughout the campaign, I mean, I did have confidence in the Liberal Party, in Premier John Hogan's ability for us to deliver on the promises that we made, partly because we had identified a mega source of revenue, right, that would help with the debt, with funding programs. So I don't have that same level of confidence in the PC government going in. I want to give people the benefit of the doubt that, they're not even sworn in yet, that they will deliver on these promises. But that's what I'm hearing now, that people want those promises delivered. I mean, the House of Assembly should be having a fall sitting. I can't imagine that will happen now, that the new government will be able to get things together and get legislation together to bring into the House. And I mean, that's where the business of government gets done. So I'm anxious to get in there this fall. So that's really the conversation that I'm hearing here in this district. People had lots of different priorities, for themselves, their families, organizations, businesses. So now it's, okay, promises were made. Let's see them happen.
Would you not support an additional independent review of the Upper Churchill MOU, given the fact that, what Justice LeBlanc had to say in the Muskrat Falls inquiry was crystal clear? Capital expenditure in excess of $50 million deserves that extra scrutiny. Would you not be in favour of that level of scrutiny?
I'm definitely in favour of having the right questions asked. I read the MOU. It's a slog of a read. When I think about the MOU and this new opportunity, I wasn't there, but I did watch what happened, that when experts were in the House of Assembly and they're willing and available to answer questions, the PC party left. They walked out. So they didn't vote yes, they didn't vote no. Instead, they left. And as a politician myself, as someone who served municipally, making decisions, that's your job, to speak and vote on behalf of your constituents. So, that was really alarming to me. And so now that they are in power, my biggest hope is that they don't let this opportunity slip through our fingers. Everybody can agree that the 1969 deal, we were done wrong, right, as Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. So the people of Gander District, who I spoke to during the election, not all, but most, they saw the MOU, this new deal, as an opportunity to sort out the province, right? And it was the Liberal government that was able to bring Quebec to the table to even consider opening up this deal 17 years early. The deal that, we all agree was not good for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. So it's such an opportunity that, I do wish the PC government well. Their success is all of our success, but don't let this opportunity slip through our fingers.
And not to split hairs or to quibble, but in this circumstance, it was actually Quebec initiated the conversation about reopening. And why? Because they had their eyes on the coveted Gull Island site, is my suggestion there. Last one before I let you go, Bettina. We haven't heard anything from John Hogan since the concession speech on election night. Historically, leaders who lose in this fashion are short for the job. Do you have continued support for John Hogan to remain the leader of the Liberal Party?
I do. Premier John Hogan is one of the reasons why I decided to run provincially, to be honest, Patty. I saw him as a terrific leader. He's looking at the province through the same lens as me, as a parent with children in the school system. And I do have a lot of confidence in his continued leadership in the party. This opposition, and nobody runs to be in opposition. We all want to be on government side. But opposition is such an important role in our democracy. And when we look right now at the makeup of government, the official opposition will have 10 former ministers of government, cabinet ministers in the official opposition. And the official opposition now has to hold this new government to account and to represent the interests of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. So especially when it comes to the MOU and where this deal is headed, I don't think there's anybody better to be leader of the opposition than John Hogan.
I wonder when we will eventually hear from John Hogan, because, of course, everyone who gets a chance to ask him a question is going to be, where mistakes were made, whether it be with leaning so hard on the Upper Churchill MOU, given that there was plenty of public questions and concerns and pushback and downright condemnation of it. So anyway, I'll leave those questions for John Hogan. But I appreciate your time this morning, Bettina. Congratulations once again.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Bettina Ford is the Liberal MHA elect in the voting district of Gander. And once again, it's hard not to see things floating in and out of my screen here. But, when people talk about reopening the House of Assembly, and it remains to be seen, because Mr. Wakeham was highly critical of just how few days members actually sit in the House of Assembly, conducting the people's business for everyone to see and hear. And that's a fair question. So be curious to see whether or not that changes. And then it's the concept of what goes on insofar as what we see. Some people are really quick to want to tune in to watch question period, even though for my money, provincially and federally, it's as much frustrating as it is illuminating to watch what goes on. It really, truly is. So some of it's really quite petty and juvenile. Very little of it is very factually helpful to inform voters and to really get a firm understanding as to where people stand. Look, I get that, the transparency issue, to know exactly what goes on. For people who are genuinely curious, number one, you can attend and you can sit in the visitors gallery, and Hansard is a transcript of every word uttered. Now, some of it will have, in parentheses, inaudible, because there's lots of, childish playground barbs hurled from all corners of the House of Assembly. But does it not feel like it's probably gotten worse, and the juvenile antics and the shenanigans have only increased based on the fact you're on camera? It's that want to be able to secure that one little highlight or low light for coming from the question periods, provincially and federally, where that's driving a lot of the conversation. Trying to get the members of your respective party to bang on their desk seems to be as important as actually offering meaningful, thoughtful commentary, regardless if you're sitting in the opposition benches and or the seat of government. So I think the cameras have made things just worse. And I know we're never going to put that toothpaste back in the tube. We're not going to revert to no cameras covering the ongoing question periods at both levels of government, or I guess either the third level of government, municipal. But it never seems quite as bad municipally. Yes, every now and then we get the sparks flying, and the same sort of issue may indeed be part of municipal government operations and council meetings. But boy, oh boy, on the national stage in particular, man, it's hard to believe that so many very serious, well-intentioned people, once they get elected, number one, they just become sometimes party robots, and number two, it's about sound bites versus actually doing the hard work. Make politics boring again. I think we'd all be better served. The cult of personality that drives people's voting intentions and their ongoing support, I don't think is really helping. Let's get a break. And when we come back, tons of show left for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number one. Good morning, Mary. You're on the air.
Oh, good morning, Patty. Just heard a caller call you, the person in Carbonear, regarding the health issue that she was dealing with. It seems like almost every day you have someone calling in regarding some kind of a health issue, which basically comes down to them not getting answers or delays in responses to the care they need. So I was calling in now wondering if she would call me back and we can discuss some of the issues that I've been dealing with my family. And that way we may be able to, start some kind of a petition for the present government to set up some kind of a system whereby people who are desperately seeking answers, they can have access to an independent advocacy authority to assist them through this process, because the health system is very complex, and the general public, including myself, even though I do have some knowledge of the system, it's terrible what they're going through. So I just wanted to say she spoke quite well regarding her issue, and I was just wondering, maybe the public should start to demand some respect in the system, because there isn't anything there right now. I mean, and it permeates the whole system throughout every part of it. It's not just in long-term care or emergency or, rehab, everywhere. On the issues that people are experiencing is terrible. And for the most part, unless you have some kind of an insight in the system, I would expect that about 90% of the people are just taking the information that they're being given from the system and not contesting it. And until something gets in place to do that and to help the people, it's not going to improve.
No, you're right. Inside the world of healthcare, it's not only complicated and very disconnected or disjointed, but once you enter into it, there's very likely something wrong with you. And so consequently, the anxiety kind of takes over your ability to maybe critically think about how to navigate the system. Same thing with your family. Not everyone has a champion in their corner either, right? So the concept of a patient navigator, for those who need it, can be extremely helpful. And it could put a worried mind at ease, which is part and parcel of recovery and getting better and having your symptoms managed. So you're right. The last time anyone belonged to our family was part of the system, chasing answers around and not even knowing who to ask questions of, because not everybody on the ward has an answer to all the big operational questions, but someone should, and that person should be easy to get a hold of.
Thinking back, the system seemed to be a lot more accessible and easier to navigate, years ago than it is now. And I have to smile to myself when I hear people like Parfrey and these people talking about these mythical teams that's in place. Basically, when you look at it, this, quote, team approach means that no one is taking any responsibility for the whole person. And you got to go from one to the other to the other. It's like if the sick person or the person with something wrong cannot do this, and their relatives, you look at the older people now, some don't even have anyone to advocate for them. And those that can are just being worn out. Like the quote, the supposedly health system that's supposed to help you is basically causing more stress and anxiety and sickness than it's curing. From my perspective.
I understand where you're coming from. I guess the collaborative care teams is a little bit more about needing to see your family doctor versus getting into the system, as you know, with the additional diagnostics and or to be admitted to hospital or to have a surgery or what have you. But I completely get your point. To make things more complicated in an already complicated world that comes with a distinct amount of worry and anxiety, because if you're dealing with your healthcare, then obviously your state of mind is altered, and to make it potentially worse is obviously counterproductive, to say the very least.
Something has to change, and if nothing else, the previous government was just deaf to anything. Personally, I've been writing for about 3 or 4 years on issues and completely ignored. And there is no agency, there's no authority out there. There is nothing that you can access to get any kind of resolution to what you're asking for. So if this present government does nothing else put in an independent advocacy team. That would go a long way in meeting everybody's need out there in the public. At least they would have someone in their corner. Right now, our tax money is going to pay for all these professional people, and they can do anything. But when it comes to the individual, there is nothing to counter and help you get through the system. And if they do not start to put something in place to do that, the system, I don't think, is ever going to change. I mean, those authorities that the advocates for system issues. I mean, that's a joke. Because we all know what the system issues are, and eventually it's going to be addressed. But it's the individuals, and if the needs of the individuals at the bottom of this whole system, if they would address it at that time, then that would work itself up through the system, and you would get some kind of improvement in the system, and it would help everybody. If one person is not having an issue that's just pertinent to themselves, I mean, for everyone, there's maybe 20 having the same issue. So it would certainly go, I think, a long way. So if this present government does nothing else except that, and it would not cost them any money if they looked at where they're putting their money now and then putting it towards an authority that can help people. So I believe that would go a long way in helping the system improve itself, and also every individual in this province, if they had someone in their corner. And I think that our provincial government owes it to the public to provide such a mechanism to them, instead of, the whole system, is just protecting itself. Mm-hmm. And nothing. It's designed to protect itself. And no one can get through the system. Anyway, I have to go. Thank you for listening to me.
I appreciate your time, Mary. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
All right, bye-bye. Very quickly, someone told me I should be ashamed of myself that I didn't mention Nathan Cirillo today. October the 22nd, not today, the 22nd of October 2014, Nathan Cirillo, who was the ceremonial sentry guard on duty at the National War Memorial, Canadian soldier, Afghanistan veteran, he was gunned down and killed. And I did see that yesterday, I guess maybe on my social media feed. So happy to mention it's the most serious attack or security breach at Parliament since the 1966 bombing. So extraordinarily sad news. And it dominated the news for a long time for the obvious reasons. Then the perpetrator made their way into Centre Block. And, people were talking about Kevin Vickers, who's now the ambassador to Ireland, and he was the sergeant at arms at the time. That was finally the person who took him down. It's not true. It's Constable Curtis Barrett from this province. He led the diamond formation from about 4 meters, and he reports feeling the bullet zip by him as shot by the perpetrator, and from maybe as close a distance as 4 meters. Barrett emptied his revolver, or his gun, I don't know what kind of weapon he was using, into this guy. I won't even give his name out here. And that's what brought an end to that extremely scary and tragic security breach, first at the National War Memorial and then in the Centre Block. Let's take a break for the news. When we come back, we're speaking with you.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number 2. Daryl, you're on the air.
Oh, hi, Paddy. How you doing today?
Bad, you?
Oh, good. Thanks, and thanks for having me on your show there again. Paddy, what I want to address, I was watching this on the CBC National, how a lot of American healthcare workers, like nurses, RNs, and doctors, are leaving the U.S. now in droves and coming to Canada. And BC is right on the ball with it. They're recruiting these people. And I watched one where a lady left and they're actually moving to Canada, living here, and setting up shop because they just don't like the way things are happening down in the U.S. So what I don't understand, well, we got a severe shortage. Well, how come health services is not targeting that market? I mean, and is working very well for BC. I think so far they got over 100 and some odd already recruited, and they're expecting is going to be a tremendous more people flowing over the border. But they're going down promoting themselves, and they're bringing them into BC. But now on the other hand, I know we got a lot of red tape, and the red tape should be lifted, like for all doctors, if you're getting them from different parts of the world or even within Canada. So I think that we got to start. We got to be alert to these things. And when I was watching that, I said, man, they're on the ball over there in BC and different places there. And their model, they got a good retention rate. So why don't we study their model and follow suit where they're recruiting medical professionals from the U.S. because it's a good time now because a lot of people are not happy the way things are.
Sure. Well, I mean, we had recruitment efforts in various parts of the world, whether it be nurses from the Caribbean or doctors from Ireland. And I've said this repeatedly regarding the office in Boston. To have that solely focused in on economic partnerships is kind of missing some opportunities, I would suggest. Number one, healthcare professionals. As you rightfully point out, BC, I think the number is 170 nurses. In addition to that, they're fast-tracking credentials so that when you come, you go to work, as opposed to sit and wait and do the paperwork and sit and wait and the cost. They're putting people right directly to work. So I think we can use the Boston office for that. And I would also add academia who's leaving the United States, because academia is not just people who are, offering lectures at the university. They're also people that are creating intellectual property, which is the new modern day driver of the economy. So I would do all three of those things if it was up to me in Boston. And, it's interesting. Last week there was a meeting nationally of all the health ministers. And of course, Minister Howell, who had lost her election, her hope to be re-elected, I just wonder who represented us, because one of the top agenda items was a national license. So in addition to trying to recruit aggressively in the States, there's no good reason in this world why your license to be a registered nurse or a doctor or whatever healthcare professional shouldn't be the same as if you're qualified to work in Vancouver, you should be qualified to work in Victoria, Newfoundland. So I don't know why we're dragging our feet on this kind of stuff, but it's a good point you make, Daryl. If there's healthcare pros looking for a new home, let's offer them one.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Patty. You're right. You're right on the mark, 100%. And not only that, if they got on the ball and start doing this, like the United States now, they're coming in droves, which is a good time to capitalize within, say, next couple of years. But like you said, anywhere in the world, like cut the red tape and all that stuff. I mean, wouldn't that be a lot cheaper if you get them relocate and stay here? And look at the millions of dollars we're paying out in travel nurses. So like you said, use that Boston office for numerous things. And not only that, go all over the place, even like what BC's doing. Just study what they're doing and look at the money we could be saving, but we're still paying out, millions of dollars in travel nurses. So it just don't make no sense at all. And I'm hoping if the right people are listening, let's get this right and start act right away and for the better.
Why not? It looks like there's an opportunity there. If it can work in one province, it can probably work in all provinces, I would think. Daryl, appreciate the time. Anything else this morning?
No. Like I said, I'll just sum it up that we gotta start being proactive and be open minded to all this. When I watch this on the national news, there's a holy jumps, man. They're a step ahead. But what a time to capitalize, especially on the Americans now. It's a good time to capitalize, and I mean, we love Canada, and I was watching it. So let's be active and cut the red tape and welcome all doctors from all countries that got the credentials, or even within Canada.
Fair ball. Appreciate the time, Daryl. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks again, Patty, and all the best to you and your listening audience and staff at the OCN.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Have a great day.
You too, pal. Bye-bye. That national license, when we talk about some campaign pledges made here, it's great to hear that we're going to try to reduce our reliance on travel nurses, of which we spent $200 million, which is a lot of money. Exactly how is that going to work? It's a great idea. for every reason you can imagine. But how, I would ask? And also with some of the pledges made and some of the follow-up that the Registered Nurses Union wants to do, are even things like the locum programs. Let's expand them beyond the Northern Peninsula and Labrador, which is something the Nurses Union has been talking about for such a long time. And the same conversation that's going to persist is for anyone that's trained as a healthcare professional, whatever they're trained to do and whatever their license could accommodate, and that's reference to scope of practice, let's let them do it. You know, the more we can allow people to do what they're actually trained for and accredited to do, it's probably better for the system. Like I sometimes struggle to understand the rationale behind, limiting the scope of practice for one professional or another. And I think many people are up on this particular topic too, is even for the nurse practitioner, let's move to a full-blown model. If he or she wants to open up a clinic on Main Street, wherever in this province, hang out their own shingle, let's let them bill MCP. Because I don't think people really care what the setting is where they get a chance to see a nurse practitioner. Let's just do it. Because if we're talking about the burden on the system, we're talking about wait times in emergency rooms, we're talking about the inability to see a primary care provider, something as fundamental as that, you'd think that would be pretty helpful to the system itself. Your thoughts. Final break of the morning. When we come back, we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Well, someone asked me why I didn't go ahead and speak about the federally regulated industries. Well, we just got sidetracked, I suppose. So people think that the federally regulated authority that the government has, and this is in reference to the fact that the Canada Labour Relations Board today shot down the concerns brought forward by the Canada Post Union about the use of Section 107 to send them back to work was unconstitutional, and that was dismissed. They've used it many times. And so, again, just as a little reminder, Section 107 was used to send the rail workers back to work, the port workers back to work. It was threatened with the Air Canada flight attendants, and now for Canada Post. And we've entered into this rotating strike, and I don't know how quickly the mail is moving or not, but that's where we are. Federally regulated industries are pretty broad. It covers a lot of stuff. Everything regarding aircraft operations, from the airlines, the airports, aerodromes, banks, which it also includes every authorized foreign bank, falls in under the federally regulated private sector code. So that's interesting. Grain elevators, feed warehouses, all First Nation band councils, Indigenous self-governments are covered by the federally regulated, or the Canada Labour Code. Canada Post, the ports, marine shipping and the ferries, pipelines. Courier services are also covered in the federally regulated. Radio, television, all the rail, all road transportation, which includes all the transport trucks and all the buses. Anything that crosses any provincial boundary is covered under the Canada Labour Code and a federally regulated industry. Telecommunications, which is, of course, everything from telephone, internet, and we can get into some of the telephone, internet, and cell service conversations here. Anything to do with atomic energy, anything to do with processing, mining for uranium, which of course is a possibility that needs to be further explored here. And then what they call to the vague references of anything business that's considered vital, essential, or integral. And some of that stuff kind of gets a little bit down into the weeds. But yeah, so the federally regulated bit and the possibility for Section 107 and things like federally regulated industries and sick days, there's a lot of them. A ton of them. So that's where that comment comes from, because it's not just about whether you're unionized working for the public sector. There's a lot of private sector falls inside that Canada Labour Code, which is why I think the conversation is a little bit bigger than simply government and organized labor relations, because it bleeds into the private sector as well. I mean, look no further. Banks, right? Including foreign banks, telecom, radio, television. So anyway, that's why it's a bit more broad than people think about and talk about. And on that cell phone business, look, I'm with you. The cell phone coverage has really gotten demonstrably worse. And so I guess for folks who are listening to this program, if you ever have a landline available to call, infinitely better connection, way better sound quality, and even people who might be using their cell phone calling from in close proximity to a tower or in the city, it's just really unfortunate how bad it's become. Like, I live in the east end of town, and years ago there was no concerns. It was very reliable, full bars all the time. Not the case anymore. It's simply not. I can drop a call standing in my kitchen. And of course, I know you may be yelling at the radio saying, well, at least you have some service, because there's parts of the province have none. Zero. And, you talk about whether it's a public safety issue, which it absolutely is. You can make specific reference to the wildfire. And we didn't talk about that this morning off the top, but maybe we'll again tomorrow morning, because there's still huge concerns out there with the aftermath of particularly the North Shore fire. But what about people who didn't get some of the necessary information in a timely fashion? Because why? They had spotty service. Couldn't make a call, couldn't receive a call, couldn't check the web. It's fine to be told, well, you can check this particular website operated by the provincial government to get up-to-date information. Yeah, if you can get online. So, yes, we can keep talking about the cell phone business. And, even during the campaign when leaders were asked about it, a lot of it was pretty vague. Now, there was some specifics by Mr. Wakeham talking about $3 million per year to work with the telecom companies in an effort to improve service. But it's the companies themselves. Look, I get their business model is not conducive to expansion of a lot of the infrastructure required, given the pretty low customer base that they share, but I don't really care about that. I'm paying you for a service. I don't think it's outrageous to want that service to actually work. I really don't think that's a huge issue. Another story that's developing here today and over the last few days, and we'll bring it to the conversation a little bit more expansive tomorrow morning, is smart meters. Because we talk a lot about energy and the cost to heat our home and the pledges to remove the provincial portion of HST from home heating. But it's the whole concept of measuring how much power we consume. Plenty of stories, especially back in February, when people were outwardly and openly questioning their bill. And we heard, well, it's windier. Okay, right. So even the consumer advocate in this province, Dennis Brown, pushing the utilities on the concept of smart meters. Newfoundland Power says it's way too costly. They'd have to pass on the cost of their customers. Mr. Brown has painted a picture where that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. But in New Brunswick, the numbers of people that are refusing the smart meters are growing by leaps and bounds. I read the story very, very quickly during one of the news breaks. I'll dig into it a little further as to the rationale. But a smart meter, from the outside looking in, and I don't know everything about smart meters, of course I don't. But for me to be able to measure when I might be able to save, and that's if we had a moving target about how much I pay for power at the peak time of breakfast time and supper time versus if I want to flick the dishwasher on at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock when I go to bed, you think it would be beneficial to the customer. But you think also in the world of peak load for the utilities is for them to be able to have a better understanding and offer options to the customers. You think that would be helpful in trying to understand peak load and maybe taking some of the burden off the peak opportunities? Would, of course, in the wintertime be getting up and eating up the house and making your breakfast and turning on the dishwasher before you go to work, or coming home and cooking and what time you're going to put on your washing machine and your dryer. So the smart meter conversation in New Brunswick is getting pretty testy, apparently. There's even threats and talk about whether or not there's going to be fines levied if and when people refuse to accept the smart meter. So we'll see if we can figure that one out a little bit clearer this afternoon and bring it to the table tomorrow morning. All right, final check-in on the Twitter box. We're VOCM Open Line. You know what to do. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. One very quick one from a listener from Labrador. This regarding the Upper Churchill and the MOU. Before starting negotiations with Quebec, I wonder if the other options were considered. For instance, Valley uses vast amount of diesel to power operations at Voisey's Bay, just 160 kilometres from Churchill Falls. There's a railway where iron ore from 4 mines converge with more mines in various stages of development, an ideal location for a steel smelter. I guess some of that consideration was brought to the table, when we talk about the quadrupling of the Labrador recall block to approximately 1,200 megawatts. But yes, when critics point out, justifiably so, is that's over the course of decades. That's not right away. And of course, some of the reasons there apparently is that the need for that power isn't there today, but I would imagine we could gobble up most of that power before we waited 35 years to get to the eventual 1,200 megawatts. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands. We will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.